video, I just want to show you guys why I'm using client, why I think maybe you should use the client, and why I think that this client may actually be the most popular one by the end of 2018. Well, that video aged poorly. A couple days ago, I uploaded a video talking about the RuneLite client, which had been around for a while, but had just recently gained a huge number of users from shoutouts on Twitter, on YouTube, and Twitch, and everything. Pretty much just talked about why the RuneLite client was getting so much traction, why people were switching over from other clients to RuneLite, and I went over some of the plugins as well as some of the more, I guess, in quotations, controversial plugins, but I really didn't make much of it. I think the video did pretty well, and you guys seem to enjoy it for the most part. But you know who actually didn't end up being that big of a fan of RuneLite? Well, probably the biggest one of them all, Jagex. I was going to make a video right away on what was happening, but I sort of decided to wait just a little bit, just a couple days, because I was sure that Jagex was going to come out with a statement, and then something else would happen, which actually did happen last night. Matt K came out with another statement about RuneLite, which we're going to go over later in the video. But in this video, I'm going to try to explain the whole situation to you guys, and maybe you can leave your opinions down in the comment section below, whether you think Jagex is doing the right thing, whether you think Jagex should be doing something else. Let me know what you guys think. If I do miss anything in the video in terms of information or just explaining something incorrectly, then again, feel free to correct me in the comment section. Let's try to get a good discussion going. So let's try to start from the very beginning and just where Jagex's stance was on third-party clients in the past. They pretty much always told us that if you end up using a third-party client, they cannot guarantee the safety of your account. They say that if you don't play through the vanilla client, the official old school RuneScape client, they cannot guarantee the safety of your account. That being said, that has not stopped people at all from playing on these third-party clients. In fact, I would say like 80% of people who play RuneScape these days actually play on a third-party client. If you go to the OSBuddy website or the Conduit website or the RuneLite website, you can see that they add up to a large majority of the current player base that is online. Now, I think that the main reason people use these clients, and I think you can all agree with me here, is that these clients just provide a lot better plugins and are just in general a lot better than the actual old school client. I'm not saying that the old school RuneScape client is unplayable. In fact, many of you guys watching this right now are probably playing on the client, and I think that if we all had to switch back to it, we'd end up doing fine. It's just we've sort of grown accustomed to all of these quality of life plugins that these clients offer to us. It's things we sort of take for granted now. Things like player lookup, XP per hour, plugins, XP orbs, clue scroll solvers, puzzle box solvers. I mean, the list goes on and on. If you guys do play on third-party clients, I'm sure you could list a plugin down in the comments that you guys rely on daily to play. And there really hasn't been an issue over the past few years with these third-party clients. Again, Jagex says we prefer maybe you play on our client, but we will allow you to play on these third-party clients, but we can't guarantee your safety. That's pretty much it. Fast forward to 3 days ago, and things get a bit more spicy. In fact, a lot more spicy. So Adam, who is one of the head developers or head leads at RuneLite, has a discussion with Matt K, and Matt K threatens legal action against RuneLite for copyright infringement if they don't shut down by the end of the week. Adam had actually asked Matt K what parts of RuneLite actually violate Jagex's copyright law so that he could take it down, and he even offered to make the entire thing a closed source project like the other clients, but Matt K insisted that the entire project must be shut down. He said that there were no specifics given about the copyright infringement claims, that only legal action would be taken. He was also informed that they were working on shutting down both OSBuddy and Conduit, but RuneLite was the first client to be contacted. As you guys can probably imagine, people were a little ticked off and people were going absolutely mental on social media, especially the 2007 Scape subreddit, which is going absolutely crazy. I think one of the big reasons people are mad here is because we're hearing about this from the RuneLite owner instead of Jagex themselves. I don't think that Matt K actually knew that Adam from RuneLite would actually make this post so late here in the United States because it was so early in the UK, so nobody from Jagex actually had a chance to respond to his message until a good 5-6 hours later. Adam pretty much acknowledged that he didn't know much about copyright law, but he's willing to work with Jagex to remove parts of the client from the public eye if requested, and he also had no problem shutting down the entire client if all other third-party clients were banned as well. His biggest issue, however, was that he didn't want RuneLite to shut down while OSBuddy was allowed to continue to operate. His biggest point being that while he does agree that RuneLite does threaten the integrity of the game, what threatens it even more is that he has to buy OSBuddy in order to gain the same competitive advantage of other players in the game. RuneLite exists to try and level the playing field as to who can develop on the client, of which I think it has done well. And he states that he doesn't think this is an acceptable way of dealing with third-party clients on Jagex's behalf. Fast forward to the next morning and we see a statement come out from Jagex themselves. In this statement, they talk about that they had a pre-arranged meeting with the RuneLite developer and they outlined their concerns with the nature of the client and asked for its immediate closure without the need to escalate any legal action. They did this because they believe that RuneLite was and is infringing on Jagex's IP rights and damaging the game, which goes against our commitment to our community to maintain the integrity of the game, specifically the sharing of tools used to deobfuscate old school RuneScape code and then republishing the said code. Whilst this may seem heavy-handed, if it's ignored, it's entirely plausible that this code can make its way into the hands of developers seeking to adapt it to create botting scripts or developers who would implement game-breaking features, we cannot allow for botting to become an even easier pursuit with our code in open source without our permission. Now, in my personal opinion, I think that this is a totally reasonable statement from Jagex. I think it's totally understandable why they posted it. They don't want this RuneLite open source client to continue to operate because it infringes on their IP rights, and they don't want people to create these botting scripts or developers to implement these game-breaking features. Later that day was the weekly Old School RuneScape Q&A, and Matt K actually made a statement in that as well, which I'll play for you guys right now.
The main one being that they had a public deobfuscator, which for anybody who doesn't know means a way of hiding code so you can't easily work out what's going on. And they made it public so you could easily deobfuscate our client and then publish that deobfuscated code. That is a breach of copyright law, which is why we're taking this down. It's a very dangerous thing as well. It allows players to, or not players, but the more nefarious parts of the community to take our code and do very, very bad things with it, which obviously we don't want to happen.
His entire statement on the RuneLite client is actually sort of long, so I'm just going to link the Q&A in the description of the video if you guys want to watch it for yourself. It's at the very beginning of the Q&A. I just didn't want to include the entire thing because it would take up way too much time. Now, there are two reasons, in my opinion, why people are very, very outraged over this. Now, the first one is the official Old School RuneScape client, and the second one is OSBuddy. It seems like many people are outraged because they don't mind if these third-party clients shut down. They don't mind if OSBuddy, RuneLite, and Conduit don't exist anymore, but only if the Old School RuneScape client, the one that Jagex provides us, the vanilla client, would just update itself and become a lot better. Many of these plugins that these third-party clients provide us are things that people want to see in the Old School RuneScape client itself. I'm not talking about these, I guess, more overpowered plugins or things that you don't necessarily want to see on the vanilla client, but just smaller things, like XP orbs or ground items or left-click grand exchange banking, things like that. Unfortunately, it seems like a lot of this work that needs to be done on the official Old School RuneScape client is actually engine work, which a lot of the team doesn't even have control over. So when something is done through the client, an update comes out, a lot of it has to go through the engine side of Jagex first. There are many people saying just hire the devs of RuneLite or hire the devs of Conduit and OSBuddy. Well, I think there's a bit more to that. I think there's a lot of layers to it that we're not seeing there. It's easier said than done, so I'm going to stay away from that suggestion for now, but I guess it is on the table. Speaking of OSBuddy, I think that they are the second biggest reason why people are freaking out at the moment. Now, before we get into OSBuddy, I just want to say that all these rumors that Jagex have this secret behind-the-scenes deal with OSBuddy, that Jagex are taking profits from OSBuddy, none of that is confirmed. That is all speculation. That's all rumors. So before you go spreading that around to everybody, it's not official, so it's definitely not 100% true. So be very careful making those sort of statements. Last video, I sort of, talked down on OSBuddy quite a bit. And I just want to say for the record that I used OSBuddy for many years. I was a paying OSBuddy Pro guy for many, many years, and I really did enjoy the client. It's just when RuneLite came out and I saw that all these features were now sort of free on this client as opposed to me paying, $40 a year for the plugins on OSBuddy, I just got very excited. And when I switched over, I find myself, just encountering fewer bugs. I encountered a lot less glitchy things in the game itself. So I just got very excited, and that's why I was so positive about RuneLite. I don't really have any bad blood with OSBuddy. In fact, I used it for many years, and I think that they sort of set the standard for third-party clients on RuneScape. So I guess we owe them a lot, actually. As you guys know, OSBuddy and Conduit are both closed source clients, which mean that the code is not available for everybody to see. Only the devs and people working on the client itself can actually see the code. It's been like that for many years. There hasn't really been an open source client until RuneLite came out, and that's the reason why people were so excited about this RuneLite client, because it was open source. Everybody could see the code. People found it to be more secure. There's all these people contributing to the code. People were very excited about it. And that was one of the reasons for its, I guess, slight downfall at the moment. But now comes the argument, why is RuneLite being told to shut down completely when Jagex could just say, how about you guys turn your open source client into a closed source client so people can continue to play on your client, just turn it into the same system and same model that OSBuddy and Conduit are using. And this part I'm not really sure on, because it seems like when Conduit came out, people were fine with it being out. Jagex had no issue with it. It was sort of like OSBuddy's little brother. It had some users on it, but, didn't have the reach of OSBuddy. But then RuneLite comes out, and this thing is taking players left and right from both clients. I mean, there was 15,000 people plus on this client at one point, which meant that Conduit and especially OSBuddy had a pretty big decrease in players playing on their client. Now that, again, I'm not totally sure on. I'm not going to throw anything out there I'm not sure of. All I'm going to say is, it is, I guess, a bit weird that, RuneLite pops up, there's all these players on all of a sudden, and now Jagex decides to make a statement. But I think it was more along the lines of Jagex not wanting an open source client as opposed to them feeling threatened that more people were switching to this client than OSBuddy. I think that OS Buddy maybe should have stayed quiet in this situation, but instead two things happened from the OS Buddy people that I think made people even more suspicious. Pretty much as soon as the RuneLite statement came out, one of the people on OS Buddy on their Discord pretty much told everybody that the client is not shutting down, they have nothing to worry about. And immediately people are like, well, why is OS Buddy so sure of this? They already talked to Jagex about this. Why are they saying that they're not shutting down, yet RuneLite is? Now, one of the things that OS Buddy did during this that I found to be just, I don't know, I just found it to be like a kick in the balls to RuneLite. I mean, with all this open source drama with RuneLite and Jagex, one of the head of OS Buddy devs, James, announced on their Discord that they were opening up something called a community API on OS Buddy, which pretty much meant that all of these OS Buddy members who want to help with plugins, help with code on OS Buddy, could do it through something called a community API, which in a sense is a bit different than what was going on with the open source at RuneLite, but actually was sort of the same thing as well. I mean, the community helping with plugins, that's what RuneLite was all about. Again, they may have had this pre-planned to be announced on this date a while back, and it was just really bad timing with all this RuneLite and Jagex drama. I just found it to be super funny that it was released during all of this. As you guys can probably imagine, the outrage pretty much only got worse at this point. I mean, you know the RuneScape community, when drama happens or when Jagex does something they're not a fan of, I mean, there's outrage all over. And if you guys ever visit the old school subreddit, it was pretty rough. I will say, though, that it is totally fine for you to critique Jagex, to be outraged at what Jagex is doing, to try to tell Jagex what they should be doing instead, but throwing any sort of personal hate or throwing any of these insults at any of the team members who, for the most part, have nothing to do with it. I really do believe that 99% of the team has nothing to do with this client situation, so do not attack any of these JMods on Twitter, especially because they have nothing to do with it. They're just doing their jobs. As I said, the backlash is only getting worse and worse, and the owner of RuneLite, Adam, continued to say that he had no plans on completely deleting the client as long as OS Buddy and Kondo were still running. About 10 hours later, ModMattK made a post on the old school subreddit just titled RuneLite Update, and in this post, he said that he's been in touch with the RuneLite developer Adam, and while discussions and our investigations continue, they are temporarily holding off legal action. Adam has agreed to make the RuneLite client a closed source client and pause development during this time. And for the most part, people seem to be very, very happy with this response. They're happy that RuneLite is not being forced to shut down, there's no legal action. Instead, it's turning to a closed source client at the moment. That being said, it's not like RuneLite is here for good. I just think that the talks are still going on at the moment, but it's very nice that we can continue to use the client. I think that the top comment on this page, we autismed our way into a result, I found that very fitting in the situation. And that is pretty much now where we stand at this point. It just seems sort of fitting to make this video, especially after the one I made on Sunday about RuneLite itself. I figured I sort of had to keep you guys updated as to what's going on. Again, leave your thoughts and comments on this whole situation in the comment section. I think that we can have, again, another great discussion on what's happening. I just want to reiterate one more point from earlier. I just want to say that I do totally understand. I think you guys should understand where Jagex is coming from as well with this whole open source client. I think that the idea is really, really cool, but from Jagex's perspective, to have a client out there that shares all of its code and allows people to potentially make these dangerous botting scripts and dangerous game-breaking scripts, I think that it's understandable that they would prefer to have something like a closed source RuneLite as opposed to an open source RuneLite. Thank you guys again for watching. If you did enjoy today's video, make sure to drop a like and a comment on it. And let's hope for the best, man. Let's hope that everything works out with all the clients and we can all stay happy with it. That's what I'm praying for, man. That's all I'm praying for. Anyways, guys, thank you all for watching. Hope to see you next time. Have a good one, and peace.